Hello, guys and dolls. Welcome back to my podcast, Conversations with Zelia. I'm your host, Zelia Lorraine, and today is Friday, November 1st, 2024. In today's episode, I'll recap the 2009 global telenovela Cama de Gato. Now, for those who are based in Brazil, do not know what Cama de Gato is. Cama de Gato was a 7 o'clock telenovela that aired on Global Play for 160. I may get the number of episodes incorrect. 460 something episodes from October 2009 to April 2010. And the novella stars Marcos Palmeira as a rich, arrogant businessman named Gustavo who runs a perfume company called Aromas, who pretty much gets humbled when in a prank gone wrong, which I'll explain later on, or not a trip gone wrong, and him getting framed for a murder he didn't commit. But it's the love of, but he winds up pretty much finding humbleness and tries to get his name clear with the help of Rose, the factionera who try to warn him about him being pranked. So since it pretty much in this review, I'll pretty much recap and review the podcast episode, pretty much discuss what the improvements it should have needed, whether or not it would have worked as an 8 o'clock novella, all of that. And considering the fact that I will discuss certain plot points in regards to this novella, there will be spoiler alert. So if you haven't watched this novella, then I recommend you not listen to this podcast until after you watched it. If you have watched the novella or have no intention of watching the novella, because we all know that there are some people that aren't fond of novellas, then you can listen to this podcast episode. This podcast episode is available to listen, and other podcast episodes is available to listen on Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or wherever you find your podcast. So let's get right into it. Before I discuss this, the novella, I'm going to describe the meaning, why it's named Cama de Gato. Cama de Gato, which is Cat's Cradle in English, is named after a game where people use string, pretty much play. It's a string game where people use string to pretty much use their hands to use the strings to make different shapes. Even the opening which has some sitcom sounding music, a sitcom sounding song by Titus. I'm sorry for mispronouncing the group's name, which is a Brazilian rock band. Pretty much reflects this with the characters. Though I'm not sure if they're with people. Though I'm not sure if they're the characters from the novella jumping on over the ropes. But I digress. But for those asking why the title of this novella is so important, there's a lot of scheming, manipulation. There's a lot of scheming, lies, and manipulations going on in this telenovela. And also another note to think about is that this is a 7 o'clock novella. We all know, and for those unfamiliar with the Brazilian novella system, the 6 o'clock novellas, they're often lighthearted novellas that are period pieces or regionalist, and the 7 o'clock novellas, they're lighthearted rom-com / dramedies. Then the 8 and 9 o'clock novellas, they're pretty much very mature. And concerning what goes on in Cama de Gato, it would have worked better as a 8 o'clock novella, which I'll get to in the final thoughts. But let's jump right to the main event. God. So the series starts with Gustavo Brendel, our main character, who's the president of a perfume company called Aromas. And the novella kicks off with him waking up in his sleep from a dream he had about him being poor, and his wife Veronica, played by Paola Oliveira, pretty much assures him that that's not going to happen. Then at work, he winds up gets angry at his own surprise party, which upsets his parents, Fernando and Julieta. And then during this scene, like the first episode is pretty much an episode where we're introduced all the leading characters. We're introduced to Rose, the cleaning lady that works at his company alongside her best friend Thais. And considering the fact there's a bunch of side plots and characters in this novella, I'm going to explain every plot the best way I can. Rose, played by Camila Patinga, she's a single mother of 4 children who are all named after well-known novella stars. Twin teenagers named Gloria and Tarciso, who are named after Gloria Menendez and Tarciso Mera, and her younger 2 children, Francisco and Regina, who are named after Francisco Cuoco and Regina Duarte. Which, if you're a non-Brazilian who watches this novella, you probably won't recognize those names unless you're familiar with Brazilian media. And she has a deadbeat bum of an ex-husband named Tal, who's pretty much a scrub essentially. And Rose goes to work cleaning the floors, and Gustavo gets enchanted by Rose's perfume, which is a recipe made from her grandmother. Then Alcino who we later learn is pretty much has some terminal illness. Pretty much has to meet up with David, Gustavo's brother, and Veronica, and they have this plan where they pretty much drop. The whole plan is pretty much Gustavo being dropped in the middle of nowhere and having to go on some adventure just so he could be humble again. Because the backstory with Gustavo was Gustavo's parents, Fernando and Julieta, they were longtime employees of his now father-in-law Severo, who ran a factory, which meant that he knew Veronica as they all knew each other since they were kids. But one day, Fernando and Julieta, they were fired by Severo after working for him for 20 years because they missed 2 days of work trying to locate Gustavo and Alcino, who went missing going camping in the woods. They were kicked out of Severo's home where they were living and working at, which left Gustavo so bitter that he didn't want to be poor again. So many years later, he winds up graduating from chemistry and pretty much sets up his perfume business and buys the mansion from Severo, who's now bankrupt, and marries Severo's daughter Veronica. Which is an interesting backstory. And Veronica herself, she also has issues with her father, namely for her Severo treated her mom badly, which led to her dying at a young age, and later on it's revealed that Severo had a child with one of his employees, which I'll explain later on. Because, like I said, there are so many characters in this. There are so many characters and storylines in Cama de Gato that I'm like Patrick saying, like, I'm feeling like Patrick SpongeBob. Who are you people? Then let's move on to the V. The V is pretty much works as he's the sense guy at Aromas. He pretty much, thanks to Gustavo being pretty much streamed like dirt, he's not confident, and it gets worse with at home, where his wife for 20 years, Sophia, who's pretty much a doormat and allows her mom to emasculate him, and his two children, Pedro, who's your typical teenage dirtbag, and his other daughter, Eurydice, who, aside from being with Tarciso, he barely has anything going for her. But the teen and child characters, they all attend the same school, and Tarciso, who has hearing problems, he always gets bullied by Pedro and his gang of misfits, consisting of Duda, Igor, and Makal, though Makal winds up distancing himself from Pedro when he gets injured in a speed racing accident. But back to the main story. Like I said, it'll be hard to keep up with the main characters because I read there are so many of them. During the meeting earlier, Veronica introduces the two new models for Romas, Natasha and Roberto, who's very important. And Veronica gets pretty much upset with Natasha's chemistry with Roberto. While unbeknownst to David, Alcino, and Veronica when discussing their plan, Rose hears this and pretty much thinks that they're going to set him up for that. It pretty much decided to warn Gustavo at the party. And Veronica's true colors is shown in the first two episodes. Veronica, she pretty much takes advantage of his plan to pretty much have Gustavo killed. And during the party, Rose, who managed to sneak in wearing a stolen dress, she tries to warn Gustavo, but Gustavo doesn't believe her and pretty much fires Rose and Thais. Though he winds up going back to the house, but not before being confronted by Natasha, who he fired earlier. Then while back at home, he gets kidnapped by the two henchmen who are in cahoots with Veronica, and they pretty much drop him off in the middle of nowhere, with him leaving him instructions and no food or water. Then meanwhile, back at the mansion, Natasha, the model, pretty much confronts Veronica and Roberto, who are messing around with each other since Veronica and Roberto had a thing. And when Veronica threatens to blackmail, when Natasha threatens to blackmail Veronica, Natasha gets killed. Veronica kills Natasha by pushing her, causing her to fall to her death. And she has her boy toy Roberto pass as pretty much this, make it seem as though Gustavo did it by wearing one of his shirts, which winds up upsetting Ernestina, who's the maid for Veronica and Gustavo. And Ernestina and her husband Pericles, played by Tony Tornado, who also works there as a butler. Pretty much, she tells her husband what happened. And I should know that Pericles and Ernestina, they're the parents of Benny, Thais's boyfriend, and who's also the father of Juca. Like I said, there's a 7-degree separation with all the main and side characters in this novella. It's a novella, so what do you expect? A long story short, Gustavo gets framed for murdering Natasha, despite the fact that he wasn't even at home. Like, make it make sense. Alcino and Mari, his sidekick or assistant, they wind up traveling to the desert, but the two henchmen dude who are working for Roberto and Veronica, they wind up chasing after Gustavo, trying to kill him, which leads to Gustavo falling off a cliff to his death, and everyone believing that he died. But a man named Zhao and his family, they wind up finding Gustavo unconscious and pretty much nurse him back to health. And when Gustavo pretty much returns to town, he finds out that not only that he's deceased, but that he's wanted for he's a suspect in Natasha's murder. And the first 70-something chapters pretty much Gustavo trying to clear his innocence, and him working. Because Gustavo, he winds up working as a seasonal worker, but gets mistreated by his boss, who also knows him on the news, but he manages to escape. Then he gets back in Rio, where he's pretty much with Rosie, while driving, finds out that her boss is still alive. And Gustavo notices Rose. Then he winds up going to a shelter where he bumps into Domenico, the dude that he cursed at in the first episode, and who knew that Domenico was an important character. It pretty much refuses help, but when he gets beaten up while sleeping on the streets and gets hospitalized, Domenico pretty much gets him released from the hospital by claiming to be his dad, and he winds up. And Gustavo pretty much apologizes because Domenico for treating him like crap, because Domenico is a real one. He pretty much helps Gustavo trying to get to Rose, who at this point is pretty much, thanks to Gustavo friend Rose, she struggles to find a job to the point she gets evicted from her home. Though she eventually does get her home back. First by working as a dancer at Solon, the Argentinian dude that Thais tries, pretty much spins the best friend character Thais is a crazy love triangle with Solon and Benny, who, like Tao, is a scrub, but a scrub that's pretty much trying with him working crazy jobs such as a popcorn vendor, which fails when the popcorn machine explodes, a funeral home driver, and all that. But Salon's pretty much this Argentinian tango dancer dude who acts campy and over the top. But Rose briefly works as a dancer at Salon's dance hall, which Gustavo winds up noticing Rose there, and thanks to him not being dressed properly, meaning formal, he winds up getting kicked out. But Rose wind up noticing. Rose and Thais, they wound up getting encountered by Domenico, who pretty much tells them about Gustavo. To pretty much make it a long story short, Rose pretty much notices Gustavo out in the rain and gives him a plate of food. It eventually winds up moving him into her house, with Gustavo having disguised himself as Vincent, Rose's cousin, and have him live in one of the rooms. And her children, and when she tells her children that she's moving in Gustavo, the only one that's against this idea is Tarciso, though he eventually warms up to it. Tarciso and Gustavo / Vincent, like I said, some of the plots is hard to keep up. Vincent, they wanted the kids and her kids and Vincent, they wanted developing a closer bond. And with Vincent / Gustavo falling for Rose, who at this point got a job as pretty much Asino's assistant at Aromas, which Veronica is not very fond of, to the point she pretty much she once even attacked Veronica, pretty much made a comment about Veronica over her clothes. Rose, I keep getting the character's name mixed up. Though Mari, who's Asino's pal, I don't know if she works at a room, but I do know that Murray is close to Asino. She helps Rose get some better clothes, while they're trying on clothes, Rose and only catches the attention of Asino, who winds up developing a crush on her, which will become important later on. Then there's Katya, the maid. Then there's Veronica's maid, Katya, who I thought was in cahoots with Veronica, but was actually an op, which we'll learn later on why. But come Halloween, Rose and Gustavo in disguise decide to go to Salon's dance hall. And considering that it's a Halloween episode, and everyone at the dance hall, they're all dressed up as movie stars or movie characters, with Rose dressed up as I forgot the name, Belle from Beauty and the Beast, Gustavo in disguise as the Beast, Thais disguised as Marilyn Monroe, Salon dressed up as Elvis, Benny, who knows that Gustavo's alive, as Tarzan, yada yada yada. And Alcino winds up coming in the party, trying to dance with Rose, which Gustavo, who believes that Alcino tried to off him, leads him punching him in the face, though he winds up manages to get him to escape. Because then things go from bad to worse when Tao, Rose's deadbeat ex-husband, figures out that Rose's cousin Vincent is Gustavo. And Tao tries to report this at Veronica's and Alcino's wedding. I forgot to mention that Veronica, through her manipulations, managed to get, namely, she pulled the typical baby trap trick by claiming that she was pregnant with Alcino's child and had Alcino marry her, which leads to Alcino alienating himself from Mari, who tried to warn her, expose Veronica, because I will state, Veronica spends the entirety of the soap opera, novella, manipulating, calculating, and manipulating, which gets tiring after a while. But Tiao goes to the wedding and tries to out Gustavo, which leads to Benny sucker punching him to the point he's speaking a bunch of gibberish. It pretty much his Pericles and Ernestina, they take a moment to pretty much help him, to pretty much allow him to get some rest, but he managed to go to the police department and pretty much rip out Gustavo, which leads to police coming to Rose's house. And Tarciso and the children and the teens, they pretty much denounce, who has started to develop a closer bond with Gustavo, they want to pretty much denounce calling out their dad on it. In fact, it's all in my shirt. Maybe look at my notes, because I did write a lot of notes for this novella. Let me look over my notes. And thanks to Tao pretty much denouncing, thanks to Tao's actions, Gustavo now has to hide out. Now has to hide out at the beach home that is owned by Veronica with the help of Pericles, who now knows that Gustavo is alive. Because gradually, over the course of the episodes, some people become aware that Gustavo is alive. So Gustavo has to hide out at the beach house, which thanks to Tao, then with Alcino, Veronica pretty much takes advantage of her marriage with Alcino to pretty much poison him, so she could get access to his, just so she could pretty much get money and power, essentially, which gets noticed by Katya, who, as I stated, is an op, who reports this to Mari. Who, despite Alcino treating her like garbage and pretty much not believing her, was still loyal to him, which Mari was a real one. There was a lot of real ones in this novella. But eventually, Gustavo was able to get an invite Gustavo asked was able to get Rose to go on a date with him at the beach house. In which while Rose travels to the beach house, Roberto is being followed on Veronica's orders. Roberto follows Rose, but luckily winds up running out of gas. And at the beach house hideout, Freeze and Gustavo, they wind up having a romantic night, which gets caught by Juvenile, who will become somewhat important later on. A worker at Aromas, and he winds up reporting it to Veronica. And we all know what happens at the end of at every romantic night. Rose and Gustavo, they made soup. Though was not concerned because it is a 7 o'clock novella. It's not lewd or explicit. But Veronica gets alerted, and which leads to her taking the protocols to go to the beach house. But unfortunately for them, Thais and Denny winds up who got alerted, pretty much also got alerted. They came through and pretty much came to the beach house, which Veronica believes that they're the couple that trespassed the beach house, and Thais loses her job. Then Tiao goes to the police to pretty much retract what he stated, but this led to him getting arrested, and Luisa, his girlfriend / Veronica's assistant, to bail him out of jail. And Tia Luisa is another character that Grana McGears thinks to her being Veronica's lapdog. She also works as Roma's as a secretary along with 2 other girls, Patricia and Susanna, and they all live at the boarding house ran by Genevieve, Thais' mother, who also has a daughter named Luli, who I thought Luli was Thais' daughter, but she's Thais' sister. And Luli pretty much Luli's storyline is her pretty much being recommended by her teacher to go on to participate in this quiz show, which I'll discuss later on. And Heloisa pretty much gets angry at Tao at the police station. Meanwhile, Veronica takes advantage of Alcino's illness to pretty much hire her dad within the company, which is a very bad decision, since her dad, Severo, winds up botching the release of a perfume that's named after Veronica's mother. Which I'll discuss, which we'll get back to that storyline later. But Alcino, but Veronica, who's pretending to be pregnant and always pulls the white girl card every time she's about to get exposed or being chewed out. Veronica pretty much pretends to be pregnant just to keep Alcina wrapped around her finger. When Alcina started to suspect something, she winds up she intentionally gets herself involved in a car accident, causing her to quote miscarry her child. And Alcina at the hospital, she winds up guilt tripping Alcina over it. And Gustavo thinks to, since since the beach house isn't safe to hide out either, Gustavo pretty much has to disappear, and he winds up working as a janitor. Then Gustavo and Domenico, who I'm going to call his guardian angel, they decide to disguise themselves as clowns for his mom's birthday. And his mom is celebrating his birthday at the nursing home, which who would have thought that there was the nursing home storyline would be important, because the nursing home storyline was that's also a light. Every Ederly character in the storyline, they're all comic relief characters, which their lead citizens are Waldemar, Lolo, Aria, Paquito, and if I miss one more, if I miss one more, please let me know in the comments. But they're also, Waldemar is a very important character later on, which you see what I mean later on. But Gustavo and Domenico, they're dressed up as clowns for the birthday party, and they do some tricks, which during one of the tricks, pretty much Domenico chooses Rose on stage, and Rose winds up reuniting with Gustavo during the trick. And Gustavo also gives his mom a rose, which winds up leaving a profound effect on Giulietta. And pretty much Gustavo winds up escaping. Gustavo and Rose wind up escaping, and Gustavo moves back in with Rose. And Giulietta pretty much, when they go back home, Giulietta winds up realizes that the clown at the party was Gustavo. In which she talks to Rose about it, and Gustavo winds up reconciling with his parents. Then, meanwhile, back at Aruma's, Alcino is pretty much big mad at Veronica as Severo for the perfume thing. And Alcino has another dilemma when Mari tells him that he found his child. I forgot to mention that Alcino's told by Mari that he has a child, and we're led on to believe that it's Deborah, but it's not Deborah. And Deborah, when we're introduced to Deborah's your typical bratty teen, though we wind up knowing why. Her mother, Lita, who's an art curator, is pretty much didn't warn Sensley, and pretty much raised her with resentment, because there are moms who didn't want to become a mom that raised their child poorly, and they wind up turning out, and the child wind up resenting them or not being rebellious. To the point that Lita winds up abandoning Deborah, and Alcino has to take her in, much to Veronica's chagrin. If Veronica pretty much tries to get rid of Deborah by trying to have her kidnapped, and by those same henchmen that try to kill Gustavo but though Mari winds up doing it. And when Mari tries to warn Alcino still being manipulated by Veronica, pretty much doesn't believe her. But back with Gustavo and his parents, he winds up telling his parents everything, including the whole Alcino thing. And Ferdinand and Julieta, they're willing to pretty much help him clear his name. And Gustavo winds up, and thanks to Severo screwing up his business with the new perfume launch, Gustavo has a bright idea for Rose's grandma's perfume to pretty much be the new perfume at Aromas. And pretty much, and David, it has to get David's approval, but David is ready to approve the perfume because, as I stated earlier, Gustavo pretty much crapped on his brother's abilities, which led to David not being confident. And Rose's perfume really needs to be improved because, in fact, Severo really effed up the company to the point that they're about to lose. This company might be going bankrupt. Which leads, and David being reluctant to pretty much release Rose's perfume led to Gustavo revealing himself as alive to him. Who is it? Sorry about the interruption, but Gustavo outs himself as alive to David, and they have a conversation. David pretty much, and Gustavo tells David that Alcino's evil, or Alcino's bad news. Then we cut to Katya, the maid, the op maid, who's shown visiting Natasha's graveyard, and it's revealed. And for those asking, Natasha was Katya's sister. No, Katya was Natasha's sister. I don't know what's up with me today. And she pretty much doesn't believe that Gustavo did it. She believes either Veronica or Alcino killed her sister. Which what a twist! And she pretty much wants vengeance for her sister's death, essentially. And Veronica and Perkles becomes suspicious of this connection when he notices, when he finds a book that Katya left. It has Natasha's picture on it. Meanwhile, David pretty much pitches the Rose's fragrance, which winds up getting approved by the company, but thanks to Veronica trying to sabotage Rose and try to get it for a low price, tries to sabotage it by trying to pretty much have it sold for a low price, though Ferdinand and Julieta winds up convincing the executives to pretty much approve it for a much higher price, which they do. Then with the teen characters, Tarcisso's hearing problems get worse, which causes him to not notice that a bus was coming, for Vincent saving him. And he winds up, when he goes to the doctors, he realizes that he has this hearing condition, which I forgot the name of the hearing condition. It's still something that's pretty much will gradually cost him his hearing. And Tarciso is angsty about this because he fears that his hearing loss is going to affect his dream of being a piano player, which, I feel him on that storyline. Imagine having, there are people with imagine pretty much learning that you have a hearing problem or hearing disability that may affect your career, that may affect your dreams. And I'm sorry if I'm pausing, I'm looking over my notes. But Rose's car, but Rose's, and I forgot to mention that Rose, she sold her car to get back her house, which Alcina winds up gifting back to her, which upsets Gus, because I remember Gustavo, which, seeing that he believes that Alcino did him dirty. Now, let's get straight into the vindication storyline. Gustavo's parents, they wind up sneaking into the office to find some proof of clearing Gustavo's name. And they wind up finding they found the name of a pilot named Carlos Eduardo, and every time they try to confront him, he pretty much escapes like the coward he is, but his wife, Consuelo, who he's pretty much treats like crap as a deadbeat to their child, winds up pretty much consulting them. Pretty much winds up consulting them. Then Tiao and his shenanigans. Then with Tiao is shenanigans, Tiao winds up going to Rose's house and outright punches Gustavo, which winds up punching out Gustavo, which causes Rose to kick him to the curb. And Gustavo to pretty much state that he's in love with Rose. Then, as part of the vindication storyline, Rose pretty much gets Patricia, Susanna, the other secretary girls, who wind up learning that Gustavo is alive, and they pretty much Pat, Susanna, Rose, and Ferdinando and Julieta. They wind up helping. They help Gustavo in clearing his name. Then with Thais and Benny, oh my god, Thais, Benny, and Salon, oh my god, oh god, her shenanigans warned me, oh my god, Thais shenanigans, Denise and Benny's shenanigans. Thais, despite being engaged for so long, she has feelings for Benny, who's dating Patricia. It spends the next few episodes sabotaging Benny's relationship with Patricia so she can get back with him again, while Genevieve, her mom, winds up developing the hots for Solon. Oh my god, but like I said, it's a telenovela. We all know there's a lot of storylines in telenovelas that you can't keep up with them. I'm feeling like the confused math lady trying to explain these storylines. And even with that, the origin from the confused math lady meme is from one novella. But the Vindication crew, go back to the Vacation Cruise line. Sorry for the long pause, but they wind up launching Rose's perfume lot, L'Eau de Rose, in which Gustavo winds up attending in disguise, which is a bad idea because he gets noticed by Helena, who tries to alert Veronica, but Veronica doesn't believe her. Then David's David's rebellious son Pedro crashing into the party to confront David over cheating on his mom with Bruna. Like, Pedro in the first half really grinded my gears, considering that due to him being coddled by his grandmother Aldegisa, who's also a piece of work. And barely learning his lesson, he winds up provoking Deborah, which gets worse when he winds up bullying, not only bullies Deborah, but he and his friends stole the test results with the intention of doctoring them, and he frames them on Terciso. Which leads to Terciso getting expelled, but thanks to Pedro foolishly admitting it in front of Durity's his sister, he winds up pretty much confesses, and Terciso's name get cleared, and he winds up advancing to the next grade, winds up passing his results. And thanks to Helena notices him, Gustavo has to relocate to the nursing home where he works as a gardener, where he winds up working as a gardener. If Veronica gets alert of him being there, but luckily they wind up thwarting her attempt to get close to Gus. Then Roberto winds up meeting Nuno and Gloria. Nuno is his brother who works at Roma's, and Nuno and Gloria are dating, which is very off since Gloria is literally a teenager and Nuno is a man in his, I guess you could say, early 20s. So, which I'll discuss in my final thoughts. Which later Roberto plotting with Veronica. Then with the vindication crew, they try to get close to Consuelo, but they find out that Consuelo sold her home. And Consuelo goes to Casinos to get pretty much asking him for money, which he winds up paying her off. Which leads to, but Rose was able to contact Consuelo pretty much, and Consuelo gives her phone number. And during the first time they tried to meet Consuelo, she got thwarted by Carlos Eduardo, but the second meeting was successful, and Veronica, the vindication crew, they wanted to disguise themselves in these funny bank robbery masks just to retrieve the security tape of Alcino and the two henchmen, which gets stolen by Luisa, who gives Veronica, who knows that Gustavo is alive. Gustavo disguised himself as Papa Noy, aka Santa Claus. And during the visit, Rose, who pretty much got Veronica, I keep getting these characters' names mixed up. Veronica gets tipped off by Roberto, and she winds up invades Rose's house to meet Gustavo hugging him in front of Rose, which leads to make it seem as though she's happy that Gustavo's alive when she was literally plotting to kill him. Then Gustavo is about to chew her out for pretty much being a plotful for plotting. Which I'm looking at my notes. So Veronica pretty much pulls the rich, pretty much pulls the Karen card and tells Gustavo that pretty much lies on Orsino to his Gustavo, which Gustavo, because due to resentment towards Orsino, eats it up. And pretty much offers to help Gustavo clear his name. Though Rose sees through Veronica's BS and tries to convince Gustavo, who pretty much is still resenting, who pretty much is too blind to see Veronica. Though the reason why he isn't, like, even with her actions later on. And Veronica pretty much has some of the evidence, some of which was stolen from Rose to pretty much clear Gustavo's name. Then Gustavo goes to the police with his lawyer and pretty much tell his side of the story. All around Veronica provokes Rose, who she pretty much resents due to being resents as the woman that has Gustavo's heart. And everyone involved with the case, they're giving their testimonies. And I forgot, and also, by the way, Orsino kicked Veronica to the curb after realizing her true colors, and is now living with Mari, which is why Veronica is being the vindictive thought she is. Lying on him. In which Orsino, he winds up getting cleared, despite Veronica trying to frame it all, though this is temporary, and Gustavo goes to jail. It won't be able to be released until the trial. Which leads to Rose, a very profound scene where Rose prays for Gustavo to be freed, which Gustavo gets freed from jail. Yay! Though on the other hand, Orsino winds up getting arrested and jailed. And as part of the symbolism of him being freed and being cleared, his name being cleared, he pretty much shaves his beard. Is now clean shaven, which we love a new appearance. And now that Gustavo is free and cleared, he wants to move Rose and her children to the mansion, which Veronica is pretty much upset about. Orsino's got Murray and Deborah, they're very upset about Orsino pretty much being in jail. Being in jail, and Orsino, because of his health problems, he winds up being hospitalized. Because I forgot to mention, they keep pretty much reminding us that he has health issues by having him be hospitalized every few episodes. Then Gustavo has a chat with Veronica, who's willing to allow Veronica to Rose and her kids in the mansion with Veronica, which the thing I liked about the conversation was Gustavo bringing up Veronica pretty much resenting Rose due to Rose being a poor black woman, a poor black cleaning lady. concerning the fact, and I'm willing to believe 100% that Veronica is bigoted concerning how she winds up treating, because concerning what she does to Juvenile and the fact and her resentment towards Rose for pretty much having having Gustavo's heart, with her always referring to Rose as the cleaning lady. Like, I swear, Veronica is the queen of gaslit, geek, girl boss, y'all. And after the conversation, Veronica crashes out by having a temper tantrum, throwing things. The come New Year's, Gustavo throws a party, which Alcina winds up sneaking into said party, and Gustavo chews him out. It pretty much reveals that he's dating Rose, and at the party, which is attended by everyone from Roberto, who's starting to develop interest in Gloria, despite Gloria being his brother's sister. Pedro, David, Sophia, everyone. Gloria pretty much. I'm sorry if I get the names confused. There's so many dang characters in this freaking novella. Gustavo pretty much make his relationship with Rose public. And also, during the conversation, Alcino tries to warn Gustavo about Veronica being bad news, but Gustavo does not believe him. Then everybody's asking what's going on with where is Domenico. Domenico is in a relationship, it's some situationship with Katya of all people, which that's so random. It pretty much, Katya is with Domenico to pretty much get more answers in regards to her sister's murder. Then there's tie out Rose's ex, who takes advantage of pretty much Rose's newfound upgrade by having a barbecue party at the mansion, taking advantage of taking advantage of younger children, wanting them there, and having it while Rose and Gustavo were gone. Then Roberto sneaky behind crashes their dinner, because the Roberto storyline was the moment where Gloria, they gave Gloria a freaking personality change, making her like the typical teenage brat. And Rose pretty much tries to warn Gloria, or tries to chew out Gloria about Roberto, who I'm guessing is in his mid late 20s, and her, like I said, they have this teenage girl dating grown men, which is super inappropriate. But Rose tries to warn Gloria about Roberto, Black Mom style, and Gloria ignores her warning, even sneaking out to go to parties, which gets her caught. And of course, Veronica is big mad about pretty much Roberto going to the dinner, though she takes it pretty much pretty much Gustavo questioning her about relation with Roberto, but Veronica pretty much takes advantage of Gloria to pretty much turn Gloria against Rose, filling her heads with dreams of big model and taking her to the salon. Then Tarciso, on the hand, he winds up undergoing a surgery, though Veronica takes advantage of Tarciso's recovery process by having Tiao in the house, which typical manipulative behavior. And Rose and Gus, they have a tense relationship, which is being stirred by Clusa, Aldegisa's former maid, who now has to work, who's pretty much hired by Veronica to spy and stir up some drama with Rose and Gustavo, with Veronica trying to manipulate and gaslight Gustavo into being the bitter and arrogant man he was. Then back to the Thais, Benny, Salome triangle. Thanks to Thais's manipulations, Benny and Pat, they're broke, and Salon gets exposed by his ex-wife and his kids, a la Norbit, where it's revealed that Salon is not only not Argentinian, but he's from Bahia. Which in Bahia, for those wondering, it's a state in the northeast region of Brazil. And when I watched that scene, I got reminded of that scene in Norbit, at the wedding scene in Norbit, where Norbit exposes Dion, the dude that Kate was going to marry, by bringing out his ex-wives and children, who pretty much expose him as a carnalist. Meanwhile, Veronica, in another profound scene, Veronica, like I said, this is the most profound and realistic novella that I ever watched. After overhearing from Aldegisa that Severo is the biological father of Juvenile, the black worker that the black worker at Ruma's, Veronica pulls the Karen card yet again and gets Juvenile fired for Juvenile fired for quote attacking her by spilling coffee on her, even though there's no proof or evidence that he ever attacks her. She just pulled those white girl tears, and he's fired. And the big question is, where is the security cameras in all these scenes? Like, where is the freaking security cameras? I know there was security cameras where Alcino goes to be with the Holy Two, but where are the security cameras in these very important scenes? But Juvenile gets fired due to Veronica lying, but by the grace of God, he gets a job as a gardener at the nursing home thanks to Irma Andrea, who's also a real MVP as well. Sister Irma, she pretty much runs the school where all the teen and children characters work at. She pretty much helps some of the characters with their problems and issues. And speaking of the nursing home, Waldemar, one of the senior citizens there, winds up regaining his memories. And through him regaining his memories, we know Waldemar's story. His daughter and his husband, or his only child and her husband, wound up perishing in a car accident, and Waldemar had to take in and raise his grandsons, Nuno, and who we find out are Nuno and Roberto. Nuno was the grandchild he was close with, seeing him as we see him. Pretty much, Waldemar, who was an airplane pilot, flying him on the planes, while Roberto was the bad seed that he had issues with, which, considering how Roberto turned out, it wasn't surprising that Roberto was the bad grandchild. So yeah, Roberto was the bad grandchild growing up, and seeing as how Roberto turned out to be evil the way he did, it's no wonder why Baltimore had issues with him. But in regards to the whole situation with Juvenile, Rose chews out Gustavo for pretty much siding with Veronica, despite the fact Veronica didn't show no physical injuries whatsoever, or showed no evidence of her getting spilled on, which is a sad reality. People getting lied on, losing their jobs or their lives for a lie, which I'll get to in my final thoughts and takeaways. But Watermore starts regaining his memories with the help of Lolo, one of the residents at the nursing home. And then the following, Rose and Gustavo, I keep mixing up these names. It's pretty much 20 plus episodes of Rose and Gustavo get into a conflict with Veronica, thanks to Veronica's gaslighting, scheming, and manipulation. With Veronica hiring Cluza, Aldagisa's former maid, to pretty much stir up some things. And because we'll go all day with Veronica's schemes to break up Rose and Gustavo, I'm only going to list a few. The first scheme is Veronica sabotaging Rose's perfume, so David would get pretty much would lose his job and she'll take over as vice president. The second scheme is Roberto instigating the Italian dude Paolo that Rose convinced. So I didn't mention this earlier, but when Rose was working as Alcino's assistant, they were going to sign a contract with this supplier named Paolo, which gets sabotaged by Veronica and Luisa, but Rose managed to pretty much talk Paolo into signing the contract. Now Paolo's appeared again in a business party, and Roberto pretty much did what Ice Cube did at the Players Club, and pretty much says some things about Rose just so Paolo could pretty much make a move on her, and Cluza lures Rose back to her bedroom where Paolo invites himself in and tries to violate Rose, which gets intervened by Gustavo, who pretty much breaks off the deal with Paolo. But Veronica shady self manages to convince Gustavo to pretty much renew his contract with Paolo, which upsets Rose to the point she moves back to the mansion, much to Rose's chagrin. And Rose is is not Gloria, is not unhappy about the change. And Gustavo, upon realizing what happened, Rose went back to her old home, decides to woo her back. Which he winds up doing successfully, even though he didn't go back. She didn't go back to him when he had that big display over her house. But he eventually gets her back, of course, and rips up the contract. Then another one of Veronica's schemes was her trying to put the moves on Gustavo under disguise of a business meeting, which gets caught by Rose, who doesn't want nothing to do with him for the next episode. And Gustavo pretty much tries to get Rose back, but he winds up getting back for her on the promise that he'll marry her. And pretty much puts Veronica in her place, which gets her big mad. And not to mention then last but not least, since like I said, we'll be all day listing a lot of Veronica schemes. Veronica has one of the new perfumes pirated, which angers Gustavo. And David gets chastised for it. Pretty much all of Veronica's schemes is pretty much everything that happens in the next 2 episodes. Pretty much Veronica sabotaging, scheming, gaslighting, manipulating Gustavo, Rose, and David just so not only to revert Gustavo to his old self, but for her to win back Gustavo's affections. And Gustavo pretty much every time Rose complains about Gustavo, tries to warn Gustavo about Veronica and try to convince about Alcino's innocence. Gustavo would pretty much cap for Veronica, which gets annoying. Which gets freaking annoying. It makes you root. Pretty much, Gustavo suffers from main character syndrome in the later chapters. I'll leave it at that. He always keeps bringing up pretty much Veronica's upbringing to defend or justify Veronica. Like, we know that Veronica's dad, Severo, treated her mom like crap and lead her to early grave, but that's not an excuse for Veronica to treat people the way she do. But meanwhile, with David, Deborah and Pedro, pretty much, and his friend gang, they wound up mistreating Deborah. But a few episodes down the line, Pedro winds up falling in love with Deborah to the point they wind up running. They pretty much to the chagrin of Sophie, who doesn't want Sophie, David's wife and Pedro, Eurydice's better, who doesn't want Pedro and Deborah to date each other. And the real reason why she doesn't want them to date is because Pedro is Alcino's biological child. I'm not making this up. So apparently, in the past, Alcino and Sophie, they used to date, and when they broke up, Sophie fell pregnant with Pedro, which was around and this relationship occurred while either before she married David or when she was married to David, but Pedro is Alcino's biological child. And we also learned that Deborah isn't Alcino's child, so I'm not sure that their relationship will be okay. Sophie confides this to Irma Andrea, who urges her to pretty much come clean with the truth. But then, when she does tell the truth to David, and he's pretty much super devastated. But Alcino, he winds up going on trial, and Carlos Eduardo, and the Unholy Two, they testified against Alcino. Rose testifies and states that Alcino is innocent, while Roberto admits on the stand that he and Veronica aren't cousins, as she claimed to throw off, because she claimed to throw off Mari in the end, Alcino gets wrongfully convicted for killing Natasha and gets imprisoned, though he winds up getting free later on for some reason. I forgot the exactly. And during the trial, Alcino winds up fainting, which leads to him getting hospitalized, and Gustavo doesn't believe that Alcino has an illness or is dying. He believes he was faking it, which I feel like he's only staying out of resentment, but it was obvious that Alcino was sick. There's no way Alcino could have been faking it. And then I'm sorry if I'm pausing, I'm looking at my notes. Then Lita, to make things worse, Lita comes out of the woodwork and wants to take Deborah, and also wants to be a mom and take Deborah back to Italy. Which leads to Deborah and Pedro running away together. And while they're running away together, they wind up making soup, and they get caught by someone that noses them, and which leads to Deborah having to hide out the nursing home, which gets snitched, but then she got snitched by Duda and Igor, who Pedro sends stuff from, which leads to her getting forcibly taken back to the airport with her mom, though they wind up returning because Deborah winds up pregnant. Then back to Waldemar winds up figuring out his past and goes to confront Roberto, who winds up dropping him. He drops off his grandfather nowhere. As it turns out, Roberto was pretty much got rid of his grandfather, just to pretty much mooch off Waldemar's retirement pension, and lied to his brother Nuno that their grandfather was dead when in actuality he's alive. But Nuno dumps Gloria because Gloria's interest in Roberto. And Nuno winds up dating Heloisa, of all people, who has since broken up with Tao. And Nuno eventually finds out that Waldemar is alive thanks to Lolo appearing during the commercial break for Luli's quiz show to pretty much present a missing person, to bring awareness of Waldemar's disappearance, which causes Roberto to leave the studio and Nuno to realize that he's alive, which, for the grace of God, they discover Waldemar, and Waldemar winds up reuniting with Nuno, and Nuno takes him back to his house where they pretty much get papers to pretty much Waldemar to recover his properties. Like, that's a very effed up thing to do to your grandfather, the same grandfather that took you in when you lost your parents. But then again, what do we expect from Roberto? But in another one of Veronica's schemes, Alcino and Rose, they're tricked into going to the hotel room, which Gloria went to that hotel room to bust Gloria, who's doing a photo shoot with Roberto. And pretty much with the intention of making it seem as though Rose was cheating on Gustavo, who's at the same hotel for a business meeting, for an interview with Alcino. And long story short, everything all comes to a head, and which leads to Gustavo leaving. Like I said, there's this same old back and forth thing. This happens for the next 2 episodes, and again they make up. And on the day of the wedding, Veronica tries to stop the wedding, which leads to Gustavo. If Gustavo finally wakes up about Veronica when he knows Veronica chatting with one of the men that kidnapped her, and because I didn't want to crash out or get even more angry, I decided to skip a few episodes of reading recaps. Before you hound me for doing that, let's be honest, we all skipped or didn't watch an entire series in full just because we skipped episodes we wanted to rage quit to. But long story short, Gustavo gets in a car accident trying to escape Veronica, and Veronica pretty much literally kidnaps him, holds him hostage, and forces him to sign all his assets under her name, which leads to her kicking Rose and the children out the mansion, and her being the president of Aromas and giving Roberto a position within the company. Pedro and Deborah, they wind up getting married due to thanks to Deborah's pregnancy, which makes Duda big mad for her to sabotage his marriage, which winds up going very awry when Deborah winds up suffering from health problems, and she pretty much dies as a result of said health problems after giving birth to the baby during an emergency delivery, which had to be super devastating for Alcino. It seemed to be like Alcino, David, Pedro, Mari, Gustavo, Rose, they cannot catch a freaking break. And all of everything that happens to them is because, directly or indirectly, because of Veronica. But eventually but long story short, Veronica eventually gets implicated as the true person that killed. Veronica and Roberta get implicated as the true people that killed Natasha, which leads to Veronica trying to run away, selling her share in the mansion to a mysterious person, which gets purchased by a mysterious person. But Roberto tries to escape and pretty much consults Gloria, tells Gloria goodbye, essentially. But gets caught and winds up getting visited by his grandfather in jail, who pretty much forgives him for all the horrible things he done. While Veronica, she tries to escape to another country. I think it was Argentina, only for her to get caught by police. Oh, God. And we find out that the person that bought Veronica's share at the mansion share at Roma's in the mansion is none other than Domenico, whose real name is Victor Betancourt. And to sum up his explanation, he was pretty much a rich person masquerading as a poor person. Namely, he had a factory. He was a wealthy factory owner who pretty much lost his friends and family due to his love of power and wealth. And he pretty much, upon seeing a garbage collector, he decides to pose as a garbage collector for some strange reason, to experience being poor, I guess. I was not paying attention. I was very confused. I've been learning Portuguese for the last 5 years, and I'm only fluent. I can figure out certain words with big context. Which Gustavo is probably justifiably upset about it, but Rose pretty much tried to convince him that he did convince him to pretty much applaud Domenico for his. And not only did they have a long-lasting marriage, but they also had long-lasting careers in cinema and TV, having starred in a lot of projects together. Just to give you a little story, pretty much give a little backstory on Tarcísio Meira and Gloria Menendez to the non-Brazilian listeners. But after the recital, they wanted meeting up with their namesakes and to have a photo op with them. And the novella concludes with Pericles performing Rose and Gustavo's theme song, Amor and Poder, at the Salon's ballroom. So, in happy ending. Yay. And now are my final thoughts. I really enjoyed this soap opera. It was a really fun watch. And also a profound watch as well, considering the scheme. How there are people that are like Veronica and Roberto, people who would lie, cheat, steal, scheme, gaslight, or even kill to pretty much climb to power and get to the top. Which is why because Paola Oliveira, she really deserved an award for playing Veronica the way she did. Veronica was quite a piece of work, to say the least. And we shouldn't use her upbringing to pretty much justify her evil actions. At least so she somewhat redeemed herself by giving up her child to be raised by Rose and Gustavo, the same people she pretty much, whose lives she tried to destroy or terrorize. Rose was probably going to be one of my favorite telenovela characters, right next to the Marias from Shades of Charm. Rose remained humble even after all the changes, even after she became well off and became Gustavo's mujer. And I really like the character development of Gustavo, how he starts the novella as an arrogant, bitter man who was wealthy and pretty much didn't want to become poor. Then when he went through what he went through, being lied on and framed for murder, being dropped off in the middle of nowhere just so he can learn how to relive life. And then him falling in love with Rose was pretty much what led to him becoming a new man, reverting back to who he was beforehand. Though this tries to get sabotaged tries to get undone by Veronica. And then the teen actors, the child and teen actors, they were also good as well. Especially Tarcísio, Pedro, Deborah, and Gloria, they gave very good performances. I really identified with Tarcísio's storyline a lot, because Tarcísio, who has a hearing disability, he fears that he's not going to become a pianist. And as a woman who's on the spectrum and neurodivergent, I identify with his storyline because there are times where I feel I won't be able to pursue my dreams because of my disability, and how I used to have to suffer from bullying in school because of said disability. And Tarcísio's storyline was one of my favorite storylines from the novella. And I really applaud Pedro for, Pedro, he started off the series as a F-wide, but the character development that he has when he dates Deborah, then how he pretty much how much he changed his character to the point this from his bully gang, and him adjusting to becoming a single father after losing Deborah under tragic circumstances. I like that as well. And I also have to shout out to the senior citizen storyline. They were great comic relief characters and a breather from the drama and chaos going on in the show. Now my likes and dislikes. What I like is the soundtrack. Like they had a freaking good soundtrack. Whoever was doing the music, you should get a pay raise. Y'all did your thing with the soundtrack. And I have some favorite songs from the soundtrack, and they're like in my head, including the theme song, Amar in Pedouar, the theme for Mario Orsino, and some of the songs among other songs in the soundtrack. They're in my head now, and I listen to them. And also like the storylines and how they reflected many duration with the characters from the children, the teenagers, the adults, and the elderly, like, and how they gave us both comedic scene, pretty much mixed both drama and comedy, like giving us funny scenes from Thais and her shenanigans, the nursing home citizens and their shenanigans. And what I dislike is the way they wrote. Oh my god, how they wrote the characters to be so stupid and not lacking self awareness about pretty much everything. Like for example, Gustavo Rose, they're not suspicious about the maid that clue about the maid Cluza, and also Gustavo taking 100 something episodes for him to wake up about Veronica, feeling any, not getting any suspicions about Veronica doing shitty things. Like Veronica tried to seduce him. Veronica acting all weird, even though this is the same chick that tried to get him killed on a few occasions. And another dislike is how they brought back the Rose, Gustavo, and Alcino love triangle just to stir problems, and Rose and Gustavo's marriage now that Veronica is out of the picture. And I feel like that was under some of the chapters too late for that. They could have done that earlier on when during Alcino's trial, or when Gustavo was already unmasked. But why bring it up now? And Domenico being Rose's father was the most random plot twist in the storyline to bring even more conflict to Rose. And another dislike was the whole romantic plot lines with Tarciso and Gloria. With Gloria dating men that are obviously age inappropriate for her, and Tarciso's love triangle with Luli and Eurydice, in which Eurydice, and I'm surprised that they didn't break up due to Pedro being a D-wide, breaking up to be with Luli since she won the thanks to her being intelligent and winning the quiz show. And then Gloria, with her dating Nuno, who initially broke up with her for lying about pretty much lying about her social status, only for her to leave Nuno his shady brother Roberto, who is normally Veronica's lackey slash side dude, but literally put his own grandfather out, falsely claimed that he was dead, and then committed fraud by collecting his pension checks under his name. But then again, considering the fact in the flashback he gave his grandfather a hard time, is not all that surprising. And then Roberto redeems himself by consuming the poison drink that was meant for Gloria. to save her. And then when Roberto dies, Gloria gets with Almeida. Because I remember they never specified the ages of Tarciso and Gloria, which I'm assuming they're probably 17 years old. Why is Gloria dating these men who are in their 20s with nobody turning a blind eye to it? I mean, Rose, she had issue with her dating Roberto because of his connection to Rose had issue with Gloria dating Roberto because of connection to Veronica, but still. And speaking of Rose, I hate how they screwed up Gloria's character in the triple digit episodes, turning out to be a spoiled brat that gets corrupted by Veronica and disobeys her mom. But again, it was kind of hinted at in the series of Gloria being ashamed of being poor, which they could have handled that a better way. With improvements, my biggest improvement with the series that, in my opinion, concerning the whole drama that goes on with Cama de Gato, some of which is too mature even for the 7 o'clock time slot. I feel like Cama de Gato would have worked better if it was an 8 o'clock telenovela since Globo was still airing 8 o'clock telenovelas time, because as I said earlier, the telenovelas that air at 7 o'clock, they're pretty much lighthearted comedic dramedies. They have a lot of slapstick humor, and Cama de Gato has mature themes that wouldn't be out of place in a 8 or 9 o'clock novella. So I feel like it would have worked better as an 8 o'clock novella just to pretty much handle all the drama and all the craziness and stuff. And my favorite, and also to have the characters act a little more logical and use realistic things, or be more realistic. And before I'll get into favorite characters, the reason why I state that Veronica was a realistic villain because, or I should have, Veronica is a realistic villain because, sad to say, there are people like Veronica who ruin people's lives with lies, gaslighting, schemes, manipulations, or murder just to lash out at their past, or just out of pure vindictiveness. Seeing as how she framed Alcino for waking up for Natasha's murder, which she actually committed, just so all because Alcino saw through her, or how she hijacked Alcino's plan and made it go wrong by hiring the 2 henchmen to kill Gustavo so she'll be a rich widow, among other things. Which is why I said this soap opera is very profound, because there are Veronicas like that in the world who have lied, steal, cheat, manipulate, kill just to gain power, or out of spite and vindictiveness. In regards to my favorite characters is the main couple, Rose and Gustavo. Rose for being a humble queen and for pretty much helping Gustavo out of the kindness of her heart, despite the fact Gustavo fired her for trying to warn him about Alcino's plan. Rose and her whole family. Then Gustavo, and I'm not saying that because I have a crush on the actor. Gustavo for being a very interesting character to watch. And seeing him grow into a changed person despite Veronica trying to undo any of that. The elderly people, then there's the elderly people because their storyline was fun and for being, because their storyline was super fun. And for pretty much helping all the characters in their own ways. Domenico and Irma Andrea for being a real one and for pretty much Domenico for pretty much for their loyalty for him helping out Gustavo and his loyalty. His sister Irma, his sister Andrea for pretty much being the wise for being a wise teacher for helping and for advising with their problems. And then regards to and also Thais, Benny, for their for being comic relief characters, that is all. And then for the characters who can't catch a break, the characters that can't catch a break is Rose, Gustavo, Rose's children, David, Alcino, and Mari, and all of it. And the reason why they can't catch a break is a lot thanks to Veronica's schemes and gaslighting and manipulation. There's always some turmoil always happens within their lives with it, but Alcino has the worst. He gets diagnosed with a terminal disease that leads him to have few days to live. He winds up he spends the entirety of the first half of the show getting gaslit and manipulated into marrying Veronica under a baby trap. He winds up finding who he believes is his long lost child, but come to find out isn't. He realizes Veronica frames him for murdering Natasha when he finally wakes up about her. Then the daughter that he raised, who he thought was his bio child, isn't his bio child, and his actual bio child is his best friend's son, who's in a relationship with his not daughter. His not daughter gets pregnant and winds up dying after giving birth to the baby due to pregnancy complications. His best friend Gustavo believes that he tried to murder him and pretty much doesn't wants nothing to do him. And he winds up dying. He's in love with Rose, who's in love with Gustavo. And finally, he dies on a boat with Gustavo, Mari, and Rose by his side. And even with Alcino, Gustavo, Rose, Alcino, and David, they all have it the worst because of what happens towards them. But anyways, that's my unhinged recap of Cama de Gato. If you want to watch it, you can watch it on Global Play, though you have to get a subscription. Or probably if it's available on Dailymotion. Check out this podcast episode on Spotify, Amazon Music, Radio, or wherever you read podcasts. I will upload this episode on YouTube soon, as with some of my other podcast episodes. In the next episode, I'll recap. Since we're on this novella thing, I'm going to discuss, pretty much tackle soap opera / novella cliches, then an anatomy arc episode on Sandro and Pina from Cheia and who she should have gone with in the end, and some childhood show hot takes. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.